Hey everybody, and welcome to Life and Leadership with David Gadberry. I'm David Gadberry, and I get the privilege this week of interviewing Gwen Hicks, who is the Executive Director of Amarillo Angels. You're going to love everything we talk about today because it'll truly make a difference in your life. You know, here at Gadberry Leadership, we like to think of leadership not in a vacuum, but in real life. And life can be messy, and so leadership has to take on the mess if it's going to be effective. So today you're going to hear a lot of things about how to navigate, how to cast vision, how to grow in that way as we talk to Gwen. So thank you so much for joining us, and we're glad you're a part of the Life and Leadership community.
Welcome to Life and Leadership with David Gadberry. We're excited that you're joining our leadership community. There's a lot of information about leadership, but a lot of times it's too sterile for real life. Life can be messy, and leadership honestly can be messy too. Here we talk about real leadership in the context of real life. If you're a leader looking for tips, insight, and wisdom on leadership, you can follow David on social media. And for upcoming group coaching experiences and more, go to gadberry.org. David is the lead pastor of Summit Church in Canyon, Texas, and we would love to invite you to be a part. For more information, go to yoursummitchurch.com. This is the Life and Leadership Podcast.
Hey Gwen, how you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh man, it's our pleasure. We're excited that you were able to do this and take time with us. And you know, when I thought of you, I thought, you know, we constantly talk about who we can bring on to interview and talk about leadership in the context of life in general. Mm-hmm. And when I thought about you, I thought, a phrase came to my mind that leaders will deal with a mess to make a difference. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think a lot of times when we get a vision about doing something, it all plays out very sterile and beautiful in our mind because we get excited and we get passionate about it. And we're just like, yes, I'm going to change the world. You know, when I first started going global, and going to different nations, in my mind it was just going to be so, and it just comes down to really hard work and working with people and dealing with issues and working through problems and gaining a lot of victories and all of this. So I just think that, you know, if we're going to be effective in leadership, we have to not just have this vision, but we have to implement it in a way that involves strategic planning and learning what those objectives may be, what those opposition forces may be, how we're going to deal with those, bring solutions in, and then just the dealing with people and the actual activity of doing it. And so I just wanted you to share your whole heart. We definitely want to talk about Amarillo Angels today.
Sounds good.
Our focus is on you as a leader, but we definitely want to hear about everything Amarillo Angels has done, is doing. And I want, before we're done, we'll let people know how they can help. So you're the Executive Director of Amarillo Angels, and you've been doing this for how long now?
We just had our third birthday. So we are a little over 3 years. We started the pilot project in late November-ish of 2016, launched to the public in 2017. So we're a three-nager.
Yeah. So did you have pre-work before that?
Oh, yes.
Yes. So is that all included in the 3 years, or is
we started probably conversations with our parent organization in the spring before of 2016, and it took a while to work it all out, and it's a great long story, but we partnered with another organization that's doing the same work. It didn't seem smart to reinvent the wheel when they wanted to partner, and we piloted expansion for them. It's Austin Angels, and so we started those conversations early, and we were breaking new ground, and cutting down the trees and trying to figure out how to make it work, and began serving our first family in November of 2016.
That's awesome. So you guys are the first.
We were the pilot for expansion.
Okay.
Yes.
So
yes.
Are there more now?
Absolutely. There are now, let me think, it changes so quickly. The pilot project was really successful here in Amarillo, and we're very grateful to our community for that, because without them and their heart for helping these sweet families and children in the foster care system, I mean, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And so now there are, I think, 22 chapters across the country. Wow. Austin created National Angels, and it's growing like crazy.
So, that's amazing.
Doing good things across the whole country.
Yeah. So I was reading a little bit about you today. That's always good to know, right? Somebody's
Now I'm
reading about
nervous.
you. Yeah. But so I know that you are a trained teacher. So you were in education for years.
Yes.
So give us a little background about Gwen. Who is Gwen Hicks?
Well, I always tell people I'm an advocate. Well, first of all, I'm a believer. Then I'm an advocate for kids. I've always had that on my heart. I'm a mom. I'm a yaya. I have 3 beautiful grandchildren, an amazing son-in-law. I'm a teacher. I still do a little bit of training and professional development for teachers and administrators through a company, a national publishing company. Don't do much of that anymore, but I started off teaching kindergarten and ended my public ed career as the Director of Instructional Services at Region 16 Education Service Center in Amarillo.
Wow.
Retired, and now I'm in chapter 2. So
wow, that's awesome. So you started in early childhood development, and then is that what you instructed in from Region 16?
No, I did several things. I was there 10 years, and the first 5, I was the coordinator for the Head Start program, and it was a beautiful program that stretched across the Panhandle in many campuses and school districts. We partnered with them and child care centers, and it's just an amazing program that really supports the whole child and the whole family, which is much of what we do at Amarillo Angels. And it's funded by a federal grant. It's a huge program. Very well done. The people at Region 16 do it very, very well. So I was in charge of all the education and training components of the program. I have a master's in educational counseling.
Okay.
So my career path's strange, but I mean, God just took me where He wanted me to be. So it's all good.
It's interesting because I find the same thing about my life. I think that there are components of the way we're made up. I think God makes us with certain talents or abilities or bents. That scripture, I love that scripture. We misuse it a lot, but it's talking about training children. It says, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they'll not depart from it. But what the truth of that scripture is, when we think of that scripture, we're talking, train them how to be moral, train them how to be good people, train them what's right in the word. But if you break that scripture down, what it really says is train up a child in the way they should go. It could be said the way they're bent. In other words, God puts in every one of us talents and abilities and skills, and our job as parents or educators or whoever is to try to identify that potential in that child and help them develop it throughout. I think the same is true of us. So it sounds like to me that you have a lot of pioneering, entrepreneurial, initiative, kind of a driven gift about you that causes you to be able to take on projects like this.
Yes, that's a consistent theme through my career, my professional career, and now my second chapter. I've always been in a place where I was helping to create change and vision, even when in the kindergarten classroom. That sounds like it would be a far stretch, but it's really not. We were looking at changing some of the things we were doing, how we were doing them based on new research and educational brain development and all those things. And so every place I've been, that has been a consistent theme of change and creating change and then visioning for the future. And I think those are gifts that God has graciously given me. And so I get excited when I get to use them.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that get extremely frustrated because they're not really in their lane and they haven't found that place yet. And then I know people who are so fulfilled in what they're doing because that's all they're doing is in their lane. I think the older we get, the more we recognize that. And I intentionally spend time trying to only do what only I can do in our organization and then hand everything else off because I know I can be more fulfilled and it'll be more beneficial for our organization. So what you do then, whatever it has been through that time and even up until Amarillo Angels, it requires a lot of vision casting, a lot of bringing change. Change is not so easy. You know,
No, it's not.
that's where it gets messy. What have you learned about that?
Well, I've learned that when you interview people and they say, "Oh, I just love change," that I always had to kind of chuckle. Everybody always says that in the
Yeah.
interview, but you like change if it's change you want,
Yeah.
and it's change that you understand, and it's change that you believe in, and you see the reason behind it. But if it seems like it change is done unto you, sometimes that creates a lot of tension and distrust. It can create a lot of distrust. And so laying the foundation of your visioning and the reason behind the change and pulling in anyone who'd be affected by that and getting their input and, really taking your time moving that forward is so critical to the success of change. You still will probably have folks that don't love it, and that's okay. But getting to the heart of why they're concerned about it, what is it that makes them uncomfortable, having those just really great conversations with them and asking them to share their heart and giving them the safety and the security to be able to tell you honestly why they're uncomfortable with it. Many times it's not an issue of the change, but it's something else in them. It's something in their world that change makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
People would like to be in something that's familiar.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's hard. And then sometimes there's a whole other layer of life happening to them or that has happened to them that you may not or may not even be aware of.
Right.
And if you can peel that onion back a little bit, then you can learn why they feel that way and help them manage that change and transition.
That's so true. Let me ask you this. I know I had a guy one time. We were going overseas first. We were going to Asia and Cambodia. So he was like, it was the first time I'd ever gone. For some reason, from the very beginning, God's just gifted me to do it. I can tell you, everywhere I've been in the world, I always just feel at home. God just made me that way. I talk to a lot of people that do this kind of work, and they're like, I just don't ever feel comfortable, but I just always do. Sometimes it's not so smart, but he was telling me, when you communicate to people and you're being translated, don't ever tell a joke. Just don't be funny. Don't tell a joke because it just, they won't get it. You'll be sitting there and it'll be quiet and it'll just be awkward. Just don't do it. So I listened to him over and over telling me that. And he said, and if you ever do it, just make sure that you talk to your translator and they really understand what you're saying, And so he was going to tell this joke about change, and he said, no, I'm not going to do it. And then he gets up there, and I mean, we've got, 700-800 pastors sitting in this movie theater in Kampong Thom, Cambodia. He's got a translator, and he's talked to him. And, the thing about Asians, especially in Asia, is they're very polite people.
They are.
And they will not, they'll just tell you, like, whether they get it or not, or whether the answer is yes or no or not. It's always yes, and they'll just nod at you like this because they don't want to offend you. And so he's telling them all about the joke, and he's like, yes, yes, yes. And so he gets up there, and we're all sitting on the front row, and the place is packed. And the guy looks over at the interpreter, and he says yes. And he looks down at me. He just says it out loud on the microphone. He says, I told you not to do this, but I'm going to try it. I think it's going to work out okay. I said, don't do it. Don't do it. And his whole joke was, no one likes change except a baby with a dirty diaper.
Right.
So he gets up there because he was going to talk about how things needed to change in that province and how they needed to change in the nation. Because when we started going there, the things were really needing to change and have changed for the better a lot. But so he gets up there and we're all just like, don't do it. And he says it, and it's crickets. I mean, we're all on the front row just dying. There's like 25 of us on the front row just rolling on the ground laughing so hard because he's made an idiot out of himself. and he just goes on and just says, like, never mind, and just moves on. And, and then when we went into the marketplace with all the Cambodians, if a little child needed to go to the restroom or something, their mom just faced them out to the street. They just no kids were wearing diapers.
Do they do split pants there? Because they do in China. They have little split pants. They just have a little slit in them.
Yeah, I don't know if they do or not, but half the kids weren't even wearing pants. It's like, and so nobody knew what a diaper was, and here he was saying nobody would change it. I'm like, man, but there, the problem with change was exactly what you said. It's scary. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times you don't know what's on the other side of change. Exactly. And so when you're a leader and you're casting vision, you said some things there, but I want you to reiterate it. That can get messy because you're dealing with all kinds of different people's personalities. Real life requires a real leadership, and you have to get down and you get honest. And so how do you combat that when you have somebody who's just averse to change? They just, it's hard for them.
Yeah.
What do you do as a leader?
Well, first of all, as a leader, I think it's so critical to lay the groundwork of relationship with those that are, on your team, in your organization. For them to be able to have a good relationship with you, and I don't mean like, we're best buds and we're going to do everything together, but to feel comfortable and safe and have an environment where they can give you feedback, whether you're, and you take it, whether you like it or not, and you listen and you take it into consideration. You may not change anything, but you listen and you take it into consideration, and you respond in a way that they feel validated in giving that response. So that's the first thing you do. On the front side, you make it safe for them to give you feedback, and you make it safe for them to open up and have open communication with you.
Right.
Once you've done that, then you have the opportunity to sit down with them and say, tell me what has made, what I can tell you're uncomfortable with this, or it seems like you're uncomfortable with this. Tell me what's making you uncomfortable. What are your concerns? And then they will usually open up and tell you. If you give them the opportunity, one-on-one, not necessarily in a large group, because some people are uncomfortable with that. You don't always know what's going on in someone's life. You may think you do. You don't know what other experiences they've had. They're probably thinking, how is this going to affect me in the long run? How is this going to impact my world? Is my job secure? Are my relationships secure? Whatever the change has to do. So you have to get down to the bottom line and like I said, peel back that onion and find out why the change makes them so uncomfortable. But before you can do that, you can't just go in as the leader, the big leader. If you've not laid that foundation, they're not going to tell you that.
That's good. Yeah, they're not. And I think relationship, that's so good. It's key. So it's necessary to do all that. We can't just go, hey, you're fired.
Well, I think you can, I'm not sure that the outcome will be that. That seems to spread fear.
It's not really effective, is it, to be that kind of a hard head and I don't want to hear anything. We have the same kind of or trying to create the same kind of culture in our team. Is we allow for pushback, but just as long as it's respectful, and we allow kind of a cross-departmental pushback. So it's not just from the person to the leader, but it's kind of in a culture in our organization that if you see something that needs to improve, you can speak to it.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter from where you're coming. And I think when you have a little bit of that atmosphere, it helps with the fear of change as well. Like you're saying, you said something a while ago about vision casting or how to get people to buy in. What did you say a while ago about that? You said something about purpose or...
Yeah. I think I actually was just listening to another podcast on the way over here, and the speaker, the interviewer was talking about, and it made such sense to me with my background in education and counseling. He said there are 3 things you need on a team, and I'm gonna see if I can get these right. He said you need, oh gosh, now I just went blank. You need psychological safety, so that they have the ability to speak honestly and openly, respectfully, appropriately.
Right.
And then you need to have connectedness within your team, and then you need to have a shared vision. Right. And I think if you can create those 3 things, and that's exactly, I'm telling you, and a lot of times you learn your leadership best lessons from making mistakes. I'll be real honest with that.
That's for certain.
I mean, I have made so many mistakes, but over the years, but when you have those 3 things, it makes sense that you can help people move through those changes successfully. And once you move a group through a big change successfully, or a organization or a staff or whatever, then you have some street cred with your folks, and they actually feel more comfortable the next time it comes around.
Talk to me a little bit about this shared vision.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great thing to say, but from our perspective, there's a lot of practical things that need to be implemented for that to happen. It's more than just putting a mission statement on a wall or having some values. how do you get not just this is our vision as an organization, but how do you get to that place of this is our shared vision? How does that happen?
Well, and I think that's a really good question. And in my experience, it has just been through lots and lots and lots of good communication, lots of taking time to get the input of all those around you when you create that vision. If you create that vision in a silo, it doesn't always fly. If you can involve your folks with being a part of creating that vision, it goes a long way to moving it forward. I think you are in a very unique situation. So when you are casting vision, you're not only casting vision on your team, your team here at Summit, but you're also casting the vision for your congregation. And that's a very different thing. I've had something similar happen, and it's hard. Sometimes people just don't want to change. And when you're dealing with, 20,000 educators across the Panhandle that you're working with to try to convince them, to take on this new instructional model, that can be hard.
Right.
Because you're not only talking about you may believe it and your team may believe in it, but when you're moving out to your customer or your client, they may not be on board.
Right.
And so how do you convince someone who's taught for, I'm just using an example from my past, but how do you convince someone who's taught for 30 years that maybe there are some different things they can do and been successful? And maybe there are some different things you can do that would help you be even more successful.
Right. Because don't some people think when you bring them this idea and they have been successful doing what they do, it almost is an affront. It's almost like saying, we're not acknowledging the success you've had. Even if you're not saying that, sometimes that's how people take it to their heart. Like, well, I thought I was doing great.
Yeah. And like, why are you coming to talk to me about this? I mean, everything in my world is going just fine. Why are you messing with me? So and it's hard. It's hard to get the leaderships on those campuses on board and because they're the same way, what we're doing is working great. Why are we wanting to change things? And we just know so much more about the brain and how the brain works and how kids learn and things like that. And so it is tough. It is really hard. But when I'm going off into education world, but when you have a state assessment and you want the kids to do well, and then you realize that what's happening in your school, your campus, your classroom is not helping prepare those kids for that state assessment, good, bad, no matter how you feel about it, we want our kids to be successful. Right. Nobody in any classroom anywhere wants their kids to fail. Right. And so we have to look at, okay, what is it that we're doing that we need to keep doing, and what is it that we're doing that maybe we need to adjust a little bit. Right. And that's a long process. It's not just one person coming in and saying, we're making these changes. You really have to build some capacity. You have to build some understanding. Help them understand the why. What is your why, as Simon Sinek says? What is your why? And why is it important to look at this? And you do that gently and you do that gradually. And the best way to do it is to help them realize it on their own. Yeah. Not you tell them, but they realize it.
Yeah, bring them to a place where they feel like they own that thought. I really subscribe to the idea of, when it comes to change, there are people who are early adopters. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're changing. They're like, yes, exactly right. Let's do it. I'm with you, whatever it is. We're going to the moon. All right, let's go to the moon. And then there are people who are like, I'm going to wait and see how this turns out. And, they're late adopters and they're like, and then you've got that middle crew, which they don't know which way to go. And a lot of times it's just kind of like what Jesus talked about in the Bible when he said, which son obeyed? The one who said they were going to obey and didn't do it, or the one who said they weren't going to do it and ended up doing it? And I think a lot of times when it comes to change, that's kind of the mentality you're dealing with. And I think the problem with leaders, you said it just a moment ago, you can't have this attitude of, I'm going to go in here and we're going to establish this change. And especially if you're dealing with layers and layers and layers of people, you can't just go in and say, boom, this is what we're doing, and walk away and go, it's all going to because inside all of those layers, there are layers. And each individual person is going to approach that in a different way. And so I think one of the things is not I have a guy that I follow named Craig Rochelle, and he's got a great church called the Life Church, and they're expanding all over the United States. But he says we always overestimate what we can do in a year, and we always underestimate what can be done in 5 years. And I think a lot of leaders go in and they expect an immediate response and an immediate change. Whereas if you'll just take this approach of, these one-on-one conversations, these individual opportunities, and then providing opportunities to actually get involved in the change. When we first started doing I Heart Canyon here, that was an interesting thing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was God, the way he brought it together. But when we first established it, it was just a thing where we said, really, I thought, man, there's something, we need to do something to touch the community. And I'm just going to be honest. I'm going to talk to you about this in a minute when it comes to Amarillo Angels. But I came to Canyon, and, we come from Edmond, Oklahoma City. So mm-hmm. our church was very diverse in a lot of ways, ethnicities, socioeconomics, mm-hmm. every way you can think, young, old. And we had, not only did we have a fairly large church in Oklahoma City, but we also had 6 campuses mm-hmm. in different communities. Mm-hmm. So now you have this diversity in your campus, but then you have diversity in each one of those communities outside. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to create this change. We were in a constant movement towards a certain goal. Mm-hmm. And when I came here, we dealt with all kinds of things. They were very wealthy, very poor, but everybody seemed to know. Mm-hmm. And when I came to Canyon, I was like, and this is not an insult to Canyon, it's because Canyon is a great community. Yes. And so many givers and generous people and loving people in this community. I love it. And here's the thing that's interesting about Canyon. It's a medium to small community. However, to me, it's small communities are communities where people grow up and just stay. Mm-hmm. But Canyon is a kind of a medium community that people move back to or yes. move into because mm-hmm. they want to live here. Absolutely. So when I first came here, I told Janae, I said, I don't think these people realize that there's poor people here.
They do.
You know what I mean?
I think you might be right.
And so one of the reasons I wanted to do I Heart Canyon is because I wanted to bring an awareness mm-hmm. that there are people struggling here. Mm-hmm. And not just a few. Yeah. And so,
like the campus that's just across the street from your church is
right.
has a Title I campus, and most people wouldn't realize that.
Yeah, right.
Great kids, and that's why a lot of people want to live here, is because you can live in a less expensive housing situation and mm-hmm. be in a really nice neighborhood.
Right, exactly.
And so that draws people. The schools draw people. So yeah, right. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so when we came, I thought, let's do something like this, and then to bring it together. But what happens when you're trying to declare a vision? Hey, this is where we're going to go. Then we were able to create a structure mm-hmm. and involve everyone in it. And so before they're even agreeing to really change and go that direction, mm-hmm. they're already experiencing the results of it.
And their eyes have been opened
right.
to what's going on. When I was right. Counseling in the district in Canyon ISD, we went out to help a family, my co-counselor and we went out to help them. Their electricity had been turned off and they just needed some help. And so we had some resources and went out to help them. And I remember walking into the home and it had dirt floor. It had a dirt floor, and you just wouldn't expect that in this. And this was out in an outlying area, and you think, okay, these kids are coming to school. They've got their electricity's been turned off, or they may have been evicted from their home, or whatever. But it is here, and I think it's a little bit covert because people don't always mm-hmm. want to. I don't know if they just don't know, or they don't see it, or they're just not in contact. I think we can oftentimes, it's just as humans, we find our tribe and we hang with them. Mm-hmm. And so being aware of what's out there is and how much need there is so critical.
Yeah. And I think too, there's a pride issue. There's, we came from Oklahoma, which is a lot like Texas in a lot of ways.
I was fixing to say, you mean there's no pride in Oklahoma? What's going on?
No, there's a lot of pride. But when we came here, it was different, and I think it's because of West Texas. It's really not an easy place to live in terms of, especially when the pioneers were coming through here, mm-hmm. and they were creating everything, and we were here. Dr. Townsend, listening to his speech the other night, I loved every minute of it. I was like, this guy is an amazing guy. But when he first came here, he was like, we're getting out of here. This is not what I thought it was going to be. But it's not like that now. But what is like that is the spirit of the people here.
They're amazing.
And I'm not trying to speak so locally because this goes out to a lot of people, but there's a spirit of just, I'll pull myself up. I don't want to ask for help and things of that nature. And so there's a little bit of that pride. And so it kind of does stay under the radar. But when you think about, and I guess because I'm talking to you, a lot of things keep revolving back around to education, but because I want to talk to you about it, how it pertains to what you're doing now. One thing that I get stirred about and get very, compassion rises up within me is, I think sometimes we think kids just go to school and all they're thinking about is that education they're going to get, and we did a podcast last week and talking about I have ADHD. And so I just remembering back when I was in school and, how hard it was just to go to school. Every year when the first day of school I was sick, I'd call my dad, I'm sick to my stomach, and he would say, you just have to stick it out. And I wasn't making that up. I wasn't making an excuse. I was so nervous. And then we'd take those tests, and back then they didn't even matter. It was just like, hey, we just want to see where you are. And I would take those tests and I would just be, because of my attention and, I just couldn't focus. And I think about kids who are impoverished. I think about kids who don't have the right size of shoes, or they don't have, they're looking around and they notice things that are different between them and someone else or somebody they're sitting next to, or they didn't have all their supplies, or, they're still worrying about, am I going to be able to play sports? Am I going to be able to get that physical? And I just think, how can you get an education if you're sitting there trying to learn and you're hungry? And we have different types of ministries and things that are affecting and making positive change in those areas. But I think sometimes we're a little bit naive about how this works. So as a leader in an educational community, just tell me a little bit about how you view that. What have you seen change over time? Is there more that's needed? How do you deal with that in the classroom?
Well, I think there's a much greater awareness of the need for that psychological, emotional safety now than there used to be. What we know about kids and the amazing brain that God created, it blows my mind how amazing his creation is. But what we know about a kiddo who's been traumatized or abused is that it actually changes the composition of their brain chemistry. And so also the great thing, so that can cause behavior issues, that can cause emotional issues, it can cause friendship issues, it can cause all kinds of things. And there's great application here to leadership when you go back and think about those change processes. We don't know what people's brains are like. We don't know always their backstory. We don't know if their brain's been traumatized. That there are ways that we can act, that the brain can actually heal itself.
Right.
And that's through safety, good nutrition, stability, consistency, love, healthy relationships. All those things can begin to repair the brain chemistry. It may not make it back to the way it was to begin with, but we may also not know what it was to begin with. Right. I think there's a lot of there's a trauma-informed care that's a huge trend in working with families in foster care, but it also is important to know in schools that there are ways to work with kids who are kind of on high alert all the time because they've had all these experiences. I can recall, it's a really long story and I probably can't get into the whole thing here, but I had a family that came in and in the middle of the year, and it was a big family, a blended family, a very blended family. And two of the kids came in, we got their schedules ready when I was counseling, and I just said, do you guys have school supplies? And they said no. Well, we kept school supplies in the closet, so we reached over and got a couple of packs of school supplies and handed them to them. Well, fast forward many years, that family ended up the kiddos ended up in the foster care system later. In many years, not too long ago, I had the opportunity to reconnect with the young man.
Wow.
and he's doing so great, and yet still has hurts and wounds. And I told him, I was calling him about something else, and I said, I need you to know who I am, because I need you to know, I don't know if you're going to want to talk to me or not. And so I told him, I had my name, and I said, did you attend XYZ campus? And he said, yes, I did. And he sat for a minute, and he said, he's on the phone, I'm on the phone. He goes, you were my counselor, weren't you? And I said, yes. And I was the person who made the call to, he goes, just a minute, I got to pull over. I was like, oh, he's going to be so mad at me. Because, when kids go into foster care, we don't know what happens. Sometimes it's a great experience, and sometimes it's not. And many times there's just so many things that go along with that. We can talk about that later. But anyway, he just said, I always wanted to know who made the call and how did you know? And so we had this really long conversation. He's actually a school administrator now.
Oh, wow.
And he said to me, do you remember when you gave me those school supplies? And I said, oh, yeah, kind of. I mean, it's been a long time. And he's like, never, ever had I walked into a school and had everything that I needed, just like everybody else. He said, so to this day, I keep school supplies in my office so kids will have what they need.
Wow.
And so I think when you hear stories like that, and it's just, it warms your heart, and just to know that, as we always say at Amarillo Angels, we're maybe not all called to foster and adopt, but we can all do something.
Right.
And I think maybe this is even your phrase from one of your parishioners has told me this, and we should refuse to do nothing.
Right.
And so we stole that from you, basically.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that. And just now having that moment, I realized this is your phrase.
I stole it from somebody else.
But it's true. As a community, we have to go in and we have to wrap ourselves. Those of us who have been given much, who have things to share, we need to give. Right. Dyron Howell with Snack Pack for Kids is an amazing program here in our area. He says, if you were in this situation, they provide food to kids with food insecurity. And so if you were in this situation and you're where you are now, you need to give back. Go ahead and turn it back around. If you were not raised in that situation and you are here now, give it back. And so I just believe with all my heart that God blesses us to give back. And so we give freely, we give willingly, we give with our whole heart, and we serve. That's one of the reasons I refuse to take a salary for being the executive director of Amarillo Angels. I'm a full-time volunteer. I don't need a salary. Yeah. So I want any donation that goes to our organization to go back to the kids and families in need.
That's powerful. That the original quote is said to have come from Helen Keller.
Oh, really?
And I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it says, she talks about, I am one, and even though I am one, I will not allow the fact that I can't, I'm paraphrasing, but it's the fact that I can't do everything to keep me from doing what I can do.
Right.
And so we just abbreviated that and said we can't do everything, but we can do something, and we refuse to do nothing. Yeah. And so I think
that's easier to remember.
Right, yeah. And I think, honestly, Gwen, I think a lot of times we disqualify ourselves because we think, first time I went to Cambodia, we've been doing this for 12 or 13 years now, and the first time I went to Cambodia, I was so overwhelmed with the need. And I felt the Holy Spirit ministering to me in my room, my hotel room, just saying, I need you to do this. I want you to take this on. And I really had this conversation with God, and I said, what do you want me to do? I mean, this is a nation that has been wrecked since 1970s. How am I going to do anything? And he just really revealed to me, it's not about you doing everything. It's about doing what you're capable of doing. And now 12 years later, and several Hope Centers that we've built, and hundreds of orphans that have been affected, and thousands of people who've heard the gospel, and ministries that we've come alongside, and you look and you think, when you're first starting out in something, you think, I don't know what I can do, but then you look at the process of time and your consistency, and you go, wow, I can't believe that we were able to do all of that. And so I think to disqualify ourselves because we can't do everything is just a ridiculous notion, even if we feel overwhelmed by it. Right. So that leads me to, we both are believers. A lot of our life is based on faith. A lot of the stuff we do on here is about leadership, and business people listen to it and all that kind of thing. But I always let them know that the principles that I live my life by are based and come straight out of the Word of God. And so, the Bible says in James chapter 1, verse 27 that true religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, that you visit the widow and the orphan in their affliction. And so here's the thing. In America, we really don't identify orphan because we don't have as much of, institutionalized orphanages and things of that nature. But what we have is foster kids. And I always like to say that America's orphans are the foster kids because they are removed from their home, and it's as if their family has been taken away from them. And it's even to a degree, and I hate to give degrees, but to a degree it's worse than losing your parents to death, because a lot of times you're being removed because of the inadequacy or the villainy of your parents. And so to cognitively be able to even deal with that is a challenge.
It is.
So I just want to say, first of all, we love what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I love it because not only because you're helping foster kids, but because you're helping foster families. People who have said, I want to get on the front lines of this issue, and actually taking, we do ministries at our church all the time for foster kids. But the truth is, and I say it every time and I mean it, it's not an insincere or ungenuine thing. We're not doing the work here. We're just resourcing the people who are doing the work. I will go home tonight and I do not have a kid that's not really mine at my house. Do you know what I mean? But there are lots of people in our church and a lot of people in the world and in our area that are doing this.
And how grateful I am for that. That God placed that on their heart, and they would want to. And not everyone who fosters is a believer, but there is a large percentage of them. I'm amazed at their selflessness and how they're putting these children ahead of their wants and needs many times. And it's just an amazing, beautiful thing to see.
Yeah. As a leader, why this?
Why this?
Why? I mean, sincerely, why? I mean, you've been an educator. You are an advocate for kids. There's no doubt. But why were you so moved that you would say, I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to take a salary for it?
Well, I believe when I retired, from my public ed world, I was 54, and felt like, or maybe 55, I can't remember. Anyway, a few years ago. And I felt like I had been poured into so much, and I had been given such amazing opportunities. And I just felt like it would be wrong. It would be being a poor steward of my experiences to just put that on a shelf and just say, okay, well, I'm done. That's it. I'm not doing that anymore. So, and so I really wanted to give back, and was very important to me. I began to pray about that, and I began to pray, God, what is it that you want me to do? And, God led me to Micah 6:8 and James 21. Yeah. And I really want to be in your service. All the years that I worked in the professional world, the education world, I believe that I was doing what God called me to do. I believe that He prepared me for this. I say often that when I felt like it was amazing to watch my career path, because it was not a normal career path. Rarely would a person with a kindergarten background and elementary school experience and a school counselor end up in the position that I ended up in as a director of instructional services. That's a weird career path. Okay. So I can't explain that anyway, except that was the Lord. But and I would get another job, and I think, well, why am I here? I don't understand this. And so, but hey, if this is the door you're opening, Lord, I'm going to walk through it. And so I knew there was a purpose. But when I got to the end of that, when I was ready to retire, I thought God was putting a period at the end of that part of my life. What I know now is, what I see so clearly now is, I can look back and I can see that was not a period, that was a comma. And every single thing that I learned to do along the way has allowed me to do this work. My nephew and his wife were fostering to adopt. I started praying this prayer. God, show me what you want me to do. And I watched them with a huge support system, a wonderful body of Christ surrounding them, a big family who loved them deeply. I watched them walk this journey, and it was hard. It was heart-wrenching to watch them hurt so much, and to watch these kids who came in with such precious sweethearts, but also with some trauma.
Yeah.
When you see a little girl scream, run, it's the cops, and go hide in the closet every single time she heard a siren. That broke my heart, you know, and it brought me back. I had kind of removed myself from day to day with kids in my career. Obviously, I always had to tie it back to that to be able to, you know, do the budget work and the personnel work and all the things I had to do in the vision casting. But when I saw that face to face, it grabbed my heart again. And I thought, this is a population of kids. And I started researching it. And I started realizing that the statistics for these kids are just abysmal. They're just abysmal, and they're heart-wrenching, and they just want to, they just rip your heart out. If you have any passion for kids at all, you can't stand it.
Right.
But I thought much like you did when you went to Cambodia, what can I do? I became a CASA, and that only intensified, but I still didn't feel like it was exactly what I was supposed to do.
CASA is
a
an
a court-appointed special advocate, and that is a person who becomes the eyes and ears for the judge in a foster care case. Right. And you're checking in on the kids, making sure they're okay, you know, making recommendations for those kiddos every time they go to court. It's a wonderful program. But I didn't know what else you could do.
Right.
And I was reading a blog from a writer that I follow, and happened to have a link to Austin Angels one day, and I clicked on that link and saw the statistics that they quoted and looked at what they were doing, and it was really and truly like God grabbed my heart and said, "Here's what I have for you." I was like, "Sure, okay, I can do that. That's no problem," you know, sassy that I am. And so, you know, let's just go ahead and tackle this big job. And so I reached out and had a conversation with the executive director, Susan Ramirez, and asked her specifically, thinking I would start something similar here in Amarillo, because I could see the need. It made sense to me what she was doing to equip the community and engage the community around these families. What they were doing in Austin, it just made sense psychologically, emotionally, educationally. I knew the population was, you know, definitely needed support. So I reached out to her, and we had a long conversation, and she said something like, "Well, why don't we just partner together? How would you feel about that?" And I was thinking, well, that sounds easy. I think that's a great idea. She said, I haven't talked to my board. I need to talk to my board. So she reached out to her board, and we began the slow process of making that happen. They asked me to come down to Austin, or up, I'm not sure, I guess it's down, over to Austin, and sit in on a board meeting. And I am not a person who's usually overwhelmed easily. But as I sat in that board meeting, they had questions for me and wanted to get to know me to see if I was normal and okay to take on their banner and move on, which I respected. But they were so far into it that I really became overwhelmed. And on the outside, I was smiling and had my happy little I'm listening face, and inside I was internally screaming, "No, this is huge. I don't know about this." And so a good friend of mine had gone down with me, and she had gone to see her son while we were in the meeting, and came back and picked me up. She's like, "How'd it go?" I was like, "Oh, I think I'm pretty sure now. I just misunderstood the Lord. I can't believe he cannot expect me to do this. What is going on?" And she just looked at me, and she's this kind of friend. She goes, "Well, that is just ridiculous. Yeah. So we're going to pray over this, and we're going to ask God to show you a clear sign." So we did. We headed back to her home in Dallas. And on the way back, I got a phone call from a gentleman who is involved in the foster care system in the world, kind of a Jace world here in this area. And he asked me to speak at a conference. He said, "I hear what you're doing. I want you to come speak." I was like, "Okay." And she looked at me like, "Well, there's your sign, you know." Yeah. So when I said, "Okay, I'll do that. I'll come talk." And then we got to her home, and at that time I was teaching a Bible study class on Sunday mornings at our church. And I opened up my curriculum, went up to my room and opened up my curriculum. And I am not kidding you. If you don't know this story, go look it up. If you're listening and you don't know this story. But it was about literally all the excuses Moses made to God when he called him to take the children to the promised land. And I was like, okay, I can't teach this if I don't believe it, and I'm not going to live it out. And so God doesn't always work like that, but boy, he worked quickly. And so I just got down on my knees and said, "Lord, it is yours, and I can't do this, but I can be your hands and feet. And if you will open doors." And then I kind of arrogantly, sassily, I've repented for that since then and prayed for forgiveness. I said, if I'll try not to get ahead of you. Yeah. And I have just been running to keep up ever since, and it's been such a joy. But it's a great it's a great example of how God's hand has been on this organization since the very first.
Yeah.
And we have continued to see his providence and his provision before as we need anything. And it's just the most glorious thing to watch. And it gives me a great testimony to share every single day about what God does, that God is alive and he is here and he is working and he is providing, and and he's, you know, he's pruning and he's doing all those other things too. And it's just been such a blessing to be a part of. I cannot tell you how humbled I am and how honored I am that he chose me to be a part of his work.
You know, when we started, somehow similarly, when we started out in ministry, we were all, foster care has always been around us somehow. I mean, we've never done it ourselves, but we have always been connected to people who did in whatever church we were in. And somehow, when we got to Oklahoma City, I met a guy that he went to this training that they did camps for foster kids. And so we started researching foster care and all of these kind of things and got real interested in it. And so we started doing a summer camp for foster kids. It was free to them. And so I think they've done, since we've left, we've been gone 8 years and they've done it. We had 10 years doing it before we left. So it was they're probably coming close to 20 years of doing this. And I would see kids in the community that would just run up to me and then foster parents would say, you can't believe how their life has changed over. And I can honestly tell you, Gwen, I don't know. I mean, we always did a really excellent program, whatever we did, but I don't know that it was life-changing. But for these kids, it was life-changing. And I remember some of the stats that we researched, and one of the stats that blew me out of the water. I mean, and still, when I hear it, when I say it, I think this can't be true. But the stat that they presented in Oklahoma, and in Oklahoma, I don't know if Texas is on the same. I don't know if it's the same here as it was there. I haven't really researched it as much, but it's an epidemic. I mean, it is an epidemic, and I think a lot there in large parts of the drug culture and things of that nature. But there was a statistic that said 85% of kids who go into foster care as a child and age out in foster care, 85% of them will go to prison at some point.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because they've been in the system for so long or what the case may be. But I just thought to myself as I read that and got ready to start doing something about this, I thought, this is not right. This is not right.
Now, can I share another statistic with you that grabs my heart every time?
Yeah.
So kiddos have a decision to make when they reach the age of 18, sometimes a little earlier. Here in the state of Texas, the state will pay for a tuition waiver for them to go on to secondary education or post-secondary education, whether that's a trade school or university or whatever. Only 3% take advantage of that. And of the 97% that choose not to take advantage of that, within the next year, 66% will be homeless, incarcerated, trafficked, or dead. And those are our kids. These are our kids from our area. These are kids from your area, wherever you are. That's not acceptable. No, that is not acceptable. And it
something has to be done. So explain to me real quickly, what does Amarillo Angels do? What is the thing that you guys do that you say this is our bread and butter? What is that?
We exist to support and walk alongside the children in the foster care system and their caretakers, whether that is in a foster home, whether that is in a residential treatment center, whether that is in a children's home. We have some of those, emergency shelter. And we want to do everything we can to walk alongside that. The reason that's important is, here I'm going to go all stats on you for just a minute. So we want to create what we call sustainable homes where families will continue to foster longer. Let my Texas accent come through here, y'all, longer. Anyway, so the average number of times a kiddo moves in the foster care system in 2 years is 7. Every time they move, it's very likely that they will go backwards in their educational attainment 4 to 6 months. So within 2 years, they could very quickly, if they were on grade level to begin with, they could which more than likely they might not be. They could be 3 years behind in school. That contributes to, all the other things. So if we can go in and we can empower our community to wrap themselves around these families, the whole family unit, the parents, the biological, the adopted, and the children in foster care, and begin to support them. 50% of new foster families will stop fostering within the first year, and the number one reason they give for ceasing to foster is that they feel a lack of support. Well, if that's what they need, let's give it to them. So we have we want to empower the community to wrap around these families and provide that support that they are saying that they need.
Right.
So they can continue fostering, so that then those kids can stay in place longer. So then they can begin to have security and good nutrition and safety, and learn how to build healthy relationships and see what it looks like to be in a healthy family setting. And that begins to heal that traumatized brain. But that has to take place. They have to be there a while for that to happen.
Right.
I personally believe that the reason the foster care system is struggles so much is because it was never intended to be the work of the state. It was intended to be the work of the church.
Yeah.
And so we, as the church, we've been praying since September that God would raise up his people to wrap around these families. You don't have to be a believer to serve a family in our program, but it is. So what we have 2 main programs. We have the Love Box program, and we have the Dare to Dream program. The Love Box program is where we get a group of people, a small group, a family, a business. We have a Rotary Club. We have all the different kinds of supper clubs, dinner clubs. There's one in Austin. They're a motorcycle group. I just want to meet them. But anyway, they go ride motorcycles together. But anyway, they agree to come on. We train them. We do the background checks, and they agree to come alongside a family that fosters and support them for a year. And that does not mean like just unconditional support. What they do is they get with them every month, and they see how they can help them. And that can look like taking them items that are thoughtful or needed. We call that intentional giving. That is a conduit and a way to build relationship with them. And then we also want them to begin to mentor the people in the family, the kiddos in foster care. Our mama is that we've been serving for over 3 years, is a single mom. She works a full-time job. She has 2 beautiful older daughters, and then has these littles that she takes in. And when her first child, her oldest, went to college, it was hard for her. And so we were a bunch of older mamas, and we had already experienced that. So we were able to walk with her through that, and do that. So it's a family thing. If the family, if we can support the whole family, then the likelihood that they're going to cease fostering is maybe a little less, and that's what we want. Because we want those kids to be in those homes, good, safe homes, as long as possible. But a Love Box group, once you get to know them, they can do other things. If they get babysit certified, they can go in and they can stay with kids while mom and dad have a date night. You can't just leave a kiddo in foster care with just anybody.
Right, they have to be trained.
They have to be trained, and some of the training is pretty extensive depending on the agency. We want to see how we can serve them every month. And so one of my favorite stories is a family that last year they have quite a large family of their own, several biologicals and one adopted, and they had a little guy that came in and was very traumatized, and it kind of turned their home upside down. These are amazing people. And when they asked in the month of February, how can we serve you this month, they said, we have to make those Valentine boxes for the school party, and we got to make a bunch of them, and we just can't even think about that. So that group came in, brought in all the supplies to make the Valentine's boxes, sat one-on-one with the kids, helped each one with the glitter and the glue and the stickers and all that stuff, and helped them create their own. And that gave the parents the opportunity to just kind of walk and be with each child a little bit at a time, and not really run around like their hair was on fire. And it was really special to that family to be able to have that support. We had a mama who worked in a school, and they asked her, what's how can we serve you this month? What's stressing you out? And she said, oh man, those end of the year teacher gifts, I have not even had a chance. And they said, tell us what you want to do. We got it. They went to shopping. Awesome. They bought the bags. They stuffed it with tissue. They got everything, the cards and everything. All she had to do was sign the card, put it in, and she was done. Those kind of things make a difference to families. And they sound so simple, but simple can help a long way. Then we have our Dare to Dream mentoring program, which we have launched now. We are still learning how to manage that process, but it's one-on-one mentoring with an older youth. There are 10 milestones that are through the context of relationship and time are addressed with the mentee, and it's kind of beautiful. It really is.
Very cool.
So yeah, those are our two main things. We also we host several events throughout the year, because as we're growing our number of folks that we're serving through our two main programs, we also want to love on as many families as we can who are in the system and we aren't there yet. We don't have enough volunteers yet to serve everybody, but that's our goal.
Yeah.
And so we have events like we just had the Christmas party, and we do several different things. We open our registration, open a community donation drive, so the community can, maybe you can't be in a Love Box group, but you can bring a gingerbread house kit for a family that's in foster care, or you can buy some hot chocolate and put it in there. And so we collect those items, we bring them together, we have a packing party. We know exactly, we close the registration before the packing party, so we know exactly who's coming. We make sure that we pack all the bags for each family, and the only thing we insist is in every delivery to a family is a handwritten note of encouragement to everybody in the family.
Awesome.
And so they write the notes, they pack the bags, we're all ready to go. And then we have this event. And so this year we rented the ice skating rink at the Civic Center and the upper concourse, and we had cookie decorating and snacks and hot cider and bouncy houses and ornaments they could make. And our friends at Storybridge, who give books to children who don't have books, came and gave away books, and we had a photo booth, just things that they don't normally get to do. We do that 3 times a year. We do Christmas, we do back to school, we collect school supplies, and then we do another event in the spring that we're getting ready to have. So we're excited about that. It's a family day camp. And we also always have our Fairy Godmother project, where we help the kids who are prom age in our area get ready for prom, and we're gearing up for that. That'll be on March the 10th. So those are our main things that we do. Right. It's so fun.
Yeah. And I can hear people listen to this thinking, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, here's 2 things I would say. Number one, that's not that big of a commitment. So do it if it's not that big a deal. That's and number 2, it does make a difference. I've been doing things like this for years and years, and it makes a huge difference.
Does.
I think some of us just don't realize, that foster kids, they do not get some of the things that just a regular kid would get. I hate to use those terms, but a kid that's just their family's intact and they're not been removed, and they get a lot of things just by being in a intact family that these foster kids won't get. And they don't, a lot of things they do get are shared things, or things that have been handed down, or
when they move from home to home, they're not allowed to take things with them.
Exactly. So I've met foster kids that didn't even know where their birthday was, and they were given a birthday because they didn't know for sure when it was. That's the reality of this life. And so things like, so I just want to reiterate again what you said, that the reason you do these things specifically is because it reinforces the families who are doing fostering so that they will foster for longer. Because one of the problems is if kids move a lot, that creates a downward spiral. And so I just want to say that stat one more time. Within 2 years, most foster kids will move 7
an average
times.
of 7 times.
7 times.
7 times. So that's 7 new communities, possibly 7 new homes, 7 new sets of parents, 7 new schools, possibly. I mean, it can, 7 new possible counselors. There's a friend of mine that works in another agency, and she was moving a young man. I think he was maybe 13, 14 years old, and she was transferring him to another placement. And she said, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And he said, "Can you tell me where I'm from?" He had no idea where he was from because he had been in the system. And she said, he said, "I have to move a lot." And he said, he's a good kid. He was, it was not a problem kid. It's just the nature of the beast. And he said, the longest I was ever any place was 9 months. And I actually made a couple of friends.
How old was he?
He was a teenager. I don't know the exact age, but he was a teenager. That kind of story, this kiddo didn't know fault of his own except for where he was born, the family he was born into. He did nothing to put himself in this situation.
Yeah.
He did nothing to cause him to be in the foster care system. And yet the longest he'd been anywhere that he could remember was 9 months, and he didn't even know where he was from. I mean,
so think about that. A lot of foster kids go through their entire childhood without friends, without real friends.
It's possible, very possible, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And then you add to the fact that the brain could be traumatized and cause, difficult behaviors or
Right.
or whatever, or they've been abused so viciously. I'm thinking of a special young man, sorry,
That's all right.
who was thrown against the wall repeatedly. And it caused a brain injury, and it caused him to have vision problems. He didn't do anything. I mean,
Right.
he was a little bitty guy.
Yeah.
And that changes things for him forever. Again, when you have things happen in your life, you're many times, and it's hard stuff. Okay, many times your community immediately responds.
Right.
I hope and pray that everybody has that community that'll wrap themselves around you and say, we are here for you,
Right.
and we are going to walk this with you, and we're going to support you through this. And if you need food, we're going to bring food, whether it's you have a cancer diagnosis, or you've had a death in your family, or you've lost your job, or whatever it is. So these families that have been so giving and open their home to these kiddos, just think of that as being another layer of support like that. They may have people to do that as well, but some of them, their parents and their families don't understand what they're doing, and they pull back and they say, you're on your own on this. We don't agree with this. We think you're making a mistake, and we're not going to do it. Not every family does that, but some do. Sometimes people don't understand when kids have behaviors. They pull back. They don't want their kids to be around the kids that have the behaviors.
Right.
And so you lose some of that. But when you have people who will just come in and think about from these kids' perspective, almost everybody that's in their life is paid to be there. Teachers, counselors, foster parents are paid. They don't they're not getting rich, but they're paid. Caseworkers, case managers, whoever, they're paid to be there. But here are these people that just keep showing up and keep loving on us and keep helping me and making a relationship with me, showing me how, they probably don't have this thought, but we're showing them how to have healthy relationships and how to interact, how to do things that maybe they don't get to do normally.
Right.
That makes a difference.
Yeah.
That
Huge
makes a
difference. Huge difference. So, that's good stuff. I could talk about it all day because
me
it's
too.
just,
It's my passion.
you know what I think a lot of people
my
think?
purpose.
You know how I think a lot of people think, and this will sound silly, maybe because we should all think a little bit more deeply than this. But I really think that a lot of people think, well, it's foster kids, the government's taking care of them. But they don't understand the overwhelmed system that we have. And they don't understand that there's a lot of really great people in the government system. But the truth is, I think the average social worker gets a degree, comes and gets a job and works for, I think, a year and a half before they quit.
I hadn't heard that. That surprised me, though.
It's something like that. Maybe it may have been 2.5 years, but I think it was a year and a half. Someone told me not long ago. And it's just so overwhelming. They come in thinking they're going to have a few cases, and they end up with a caseload that is unbelievably large. And
and every single person I've met that works in the system wants to do these things for these kids.
Right, and they
But they can't.
But they can't.
They can't. All they're managing to do, because their caseloads are so large, is taking care of the essential and checking the required boxes and things.
And some things they're not even allowed to do.
Exactly.
So I've never met a caseworker either that wasn't a superstar as far as I was concerned, just caring people. And I won't say that they're, some of them that work for years may be a little jaded or a little, hard because they've seen so much. But the truth is they want change. And honestly, Gwen, I don't see any kind of real change happening if the church and people in community don't come alongside this and say, hey, listen, I heard one guy say, listen, you will deal with this now or you'll deal with it later. We can give, we can help, we can encourage, but these kids are going to end up showing up in your life in some way, whether it's crime or whatever, some kind of dependency that's going to, it's costing everyone around us. And most importantly, it's costing them and to no fault of their own. So I'd love to, I had some questions here that I was going to try to get into, but there's no way we could do it because I was going to, we'll have to have another session.
45-hour podcast.
Yeah, we'll have to have another session. We take them long sometimes because of the content, but I was going to ask questions like, what are the issues that are bringing us here? What are the predominant things that are causing us to have this epidemic of
I will tell you the
kids?
cases that we work with very quickly. I would, this is just a number out of my head. I don't have an official statistic on this, but I would venture to say 95% of the kiddos that end in the system, it goes back to somehow to drug use.
Yeah.
Which goes back to some other things. There's also a generational aspect to this.
Right.
75% of the girls that come out of the foster care system by age 19 will have a child, and 50% of those children will go back into the system.
Wow. That's overwhelming. And they're almost guaranteed to be in poverty for the rest of their life.
Well, I feel like there's two things that can change a person's life. One's Jesus, obviously, and then the other is education.
Right.
And so if you're not getting education, many times when they age out, they've got their job at, whatever fast food place or whatever, and they think, they're like every other 18-year-old. They haven't experienced life, and their brain's not fully developed and all the things. And so they end up very quickly realizing they can't live on that salary.
Right.
And so they jump from couch to couch to couch until they've worn out their welcome, and then they're on the streets.
Yeah.
So, when you look at it, I think it's Desmond Tutu that says, we've got to stop pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in.
Yeah.
And that's what Amarillo Angels is trying to do. We're trying to create a systems change in our area, in the foster care system.
Right.
You look at the things that our community, and probably every community I can think of, cares about: homelessness, education, teenage pregnancy, drug use, incarceration, sex trafficking, all those things. This population has a high propensity of finding themselves in those situations.
So true. So if we just helped in this area or this arena, it could really affect all of those things we just talked about.
It would be a place to start. Yeah, for sure.
So tell us how we can help Amarillo Angels.
Oh, so many ways.
Yeah.
One of the things we want to do is we want to make it easy for people to support these kiddos and help create this change. And so we have those donation drives. First of all, follow us on social media. We're on. We have a really cool logo. It looks really great. It's got like wings on it, and it looks like almost like a Harley Davidson kind of logo, I think. And that is so, if you cannot see me, that is so not me. But anyway, but find us on social media, Instagram. I don't know. I don't have all my handles memorized, but search for Amarillo Angels and you'll find us. And then so Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And then you can go to our website, www.amarilloangels.org, sign up for our newsletter, be a part of that. Reach out to us, learn more about what we do on that website. Reach out to us, start a Love Box group. It is so much fun. It is so much fun. Yeah. And it is such a blessing. You know how when you start to think, I hope to bless somebody else, and you end up being blessed yourself many times over. It's that. Sign up to be a mentor. But watch our social media if you want to help with the donation drive. Right now we're collecting prom dresses. We have these kiddos coming in on March the 10th to get all gussied up and ready for prom. We need prom dresses. We'll provide tux vouchers and all the things. And but yeah, if you want to do that, if you're a hair and makeup artist, you can come help us. We do the full meal deal at that event, and it is so fun. And then making donations.
This is not a prom for them. This is them
getting ready to go to their prom. Yes,
right.
Yes.
Let me ask you one question that I know that people probably have this question.
Okay.
Your name is Amarillo Angels.
Yes.
Right. Does that mean that you're only helping families in Amarillo?
No, it does not. We are actually designed to cover the entire Department of Family and Protective Services Region 1, which goes from the top of the Texas Panhandle down past Lubbock. Obviously, we are very lean, and we're very feisty, and we're very sassy. We believe we have a donated office space. We believe in trying to be very economical, so that as much of the donations that people make go straight to the kids and the families. So we only have one part-time employee that's paid, and then we use interns from the university. Again, I'm a full-time volunteer, and volunteers from the community to make this happen. For 2.5 years, we were 100% volunteer, but it grew so quickly that we hired we didn't have to, we wanted to hire an amazing young woman who is our part-time case manager, and we're growing again very quickly, so we're going to be adding another part-time. So we are focused primarily on the upper part of the Texas Panhandle, but we hope to be able to move someday soon. We do have one Love Box group in Lubbock, and we have one in Pampa. We have I don't know, we have one in Tulia. We have them kind of scattered out throughout the area. But anyone in the foster care system in this area or beyond, you come to our events. Let us love on you. Let us give you these bags of donations that our community pours out, so that you can feel loved and supported and encouraged.
So that one step to get them, what's the first step they should take to get involved? Like AmarilloAngels.com, is that your website? Is that .org?
Excuse me, .org.
Okay,
Yeah,
AmarilloAngels.org. And if they go there, they can click on different things that'll get them.
Or you can email us at Gwen, Gwen, at AmarilloAngels.org, or info@AmarilloAngels.org, and just say, hey, I want to get involved.
All right.
And how can I help? And we love to find people who have great skill sets. We have a volunteer graphic designer and a volunteer social media director. We really do try to make it so that people can use their skill sets to help these kiddos.
That's good.
We'll find a way.
Yeah,
I promise.
That's awesome. Okay, so let me ask you one more question as we're closing, because this is all about leadership. And we've definitely talked about the mess and how to approach that and how to get people to buy in and all of that kind of thing. Most leaders I know, including myself, are results oriented. I want to know if what I'm doing makes a difference.
Absolutely.
So just share quickly what you think as a leader, taking on this, saying, I believe God's called me to this, so I'm taking this challenge, casting vision, bringing people into what we're trying to do, building community to try to achieve what we need to achieve, making a difference in the lives of these kids. Tell us as a leader, what are the results, like the tangible results you're seeing?
As a leader in the organization, or as with the families?
Anyway, whatever speaks to that in you that says, I'm doing this and I'm expecting to see this happen. Share that.
So our ultimate goal, which is very lofty, because we believe lofty goals are important. Our ultimate goal would be for every single family in this area who's in the foster care system to have a Love Box group, and the kids who are old enough to have a mentor. Where, like I said, we're a baby. We're just growing. We're having growing pains. We're growing so fast, which is such a great thing. We're so grateful. A while back, there were 183 licensed foster care homes. That's not counting kinship placements, family placements, things like that.
Right.
Licensed foster care homes in Canyon and Amarillo, Texas. Okay, 183. There were, at that time, over about 200 churches. If every church would take one or two families and love them like that, then our problem in this part of the Panhandle would be solved.
Yeah.
They would have the support that they need. So what we hear from, we're working on developing.
Saying take several families.
No.
If each church would just take a couple
one
of
or
families.
one or two.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
we
good.
would be able to serve so well, or businesses, and you think you add businesses to that, and community groups to that. It could just be amazing, but. And then we could focus then moving south and making that same thing happen down in Lubbock.
So what
in the
have
Lubbock
you
area.
seen?
We don't have a lot of quantitative data at this point. We have a lot of qualitative data. We are in the process of developing ways to measure the quantitative, and so what we see is we hear families say, we would have given up if it hadn't been for our Love Box group. Their support meant that we could continue. We have a young woman who was a biological daughter who put her note of encouragement when she came, because they get them too.
Yeah.
And they came to an event, a big event, taped it to the mirror in her bedroom and said, hey, her mom noticed it was up there for months and months and months and months. And finally she said, hey, I noticed that note's up there. Tell me why that's up there. And she said, Mama, sometimes this is hard. And she said, and every time we're having a hard day, I just go in there and I read that note. And I know that it's going to be okay. And I feel better. So that child is saying, I can continue to do this because some person, we don't know who that is, wrote that note at a packing party and put it in that bag, and it made all the difference for that young woman. We have kids that we've followed for a while that we see now going to university, and it's hard, but we're supporting them at university. We are college, and we have families that it will say things like, we don't understand why you're doing this, but please don't stop, because it means the world to us. So that's the results that we see. We doubled our Love Box, the number of kiddos served in our Love Box program in the last year.
Wow.
We still are not anywhere near where we need to be.
Wow.
I think I looked at numbers yesterday, and we have 26 Love Box groups. We have 6 in the onboarding process, which is crazy. And so that's super fast. And then I think it's 86 kiddos. And then, we'll see what those next 6 groups bring on. But that's just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
That's just a drop in the bucket.
That's good.
It's great. And it's pretty amazing. So
That's
come
awesome.
on, come join us. We're
All right.
having
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It is fun to gift things to people and to be generous towards people.
That's my love language, is giving gifts. So
Yeah.
this just fits right along with that.
Right. And it always benefits you more than it does them. It
Absolutely.
does. You take things away from it and it helps you stop being so selfish. I know a lot of people, they struggle with that. They struggle with, when I say self, I should say self-centered. We struggle with thinking of ourselves too much. And when you do something like this, it'll change your whole perspective.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, a lot of times when I have people that are really struggling, I will give them something to do that cares for someone else. And there's just something about a perspective shift when you're taking care of someone else that you realize, hey, my situation isn't as bad as I thought it was.
And our society is so focused on self now.
Yeah.
It's all about what I believe, and we're in a time and a place where you can find any resource online or whatever on as my grandson says, is on the Google. But you can find anything to back up your way of thinking.
Right.
So taking yourself out of your perspective a little bit and looking to see, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't really understand this.
Right.
Or maybe I didn't even know about this.
Yeah.
And I can help and service. I was thinking about this as I was driving over, David, and I guess my philosophy of leadership goes back to Micah 6:8, and that's to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. And if we can do that as a leader, and if we can do that as a community, and whether it's this population of kiddos in foster care and families that foster, or another, there's lots of needs out there.
Yeah.
But if we can act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly, then we can change the world.
There we go. Well, thanks for joining us today. And all those you are a part of our leadership community, you know that you can get a hold of Gwen at amarilloangels.org. It's definitely a worthy thing. We support it. We love them. We love what they're doing. And any way we can help, we try to help. And so we have people in our church that serve on your team. And it's exciting to see that happening. And, it's not a big commitment, but it's something you could do very easily. So if you're in the area and you want to help with this, and maybe you're not a person who's around here, find something that you can put your hand to that helps with foster care families, because it truly is making a difference. And if they will make the commitment to be on the front lines like that, we should say to ourselves, hey, I'm going to back that and help them get this done. So thank you so much for being a part today. God bless you. Go add value to someone today, because I guarantee you the greater value will be added to you. God bless.
Thanks for being a part of the Life and Leadership podcast all around the world. We have listeners that are a part of our leadership family from Nigeria, Sweden, South Korea, United Kingdom, and all over the United States. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castro, Castbox, and Podchaser. For a video version of this podcast, you can subscribe on YouTube. Join us next week for more on Life and Leadership.